While most presidents wore suit jackets, ties, and dress pants all the time, you don't have to any longer. Because Presidents Unplugged has merch. If you want to check out some new shirts to buy as a nice gift for somebody in your family or just something that you want yourself, go to presidentsunpluggedmerch.com to check out new shirts, hoodies, crew necks, and anything else that you can dream of. Now in many more colors and new designs coming soon. I'm very excited for the President's Unplugged merch store to finally be open. Now, let's get back to the show. What president had a pet raccoon named Rebecca? Why did FDR really serve 4 terms? And who are the most influential first ladies of all time? You might hear these questions in the same sentence and say, how are they even connected? What in the world is the theme of this episode? Answering you, the President's Unplugged community, by answering your most burning questions about the presidential position. These questions are from Instagram, and if you want to be in on a future episode or even get your question featured on the show, make sure to tune in on the Instagram weekly to see some new posts. But now, let's see, with the most burning questions, why these 45 men who were the president are so interesting. Let's do this. Our first question comes from Sydney Klutz 23, asking the amazing question of, what are some of the most interesting pets that have ever been in the White House? Oh my goodness, great question to start us off. Herbert Hoover and John Quincy Adams both had alligators. Thomas Jefferson and Teddy Roosevelt both had black bear cubs. Calvin Coolidge was that fella who had a pet raccoon named Rebecca at the White House, and William Howard Taft had a pet cow on the White House lawn that looked just like him. I'm sorry, William Howard Taft. And in my opinion, the worst one, Benjamin Harrison just had a possum, and if you've ever been within 20 feet of a possum, yeah, I wouldn't keep a possum as a pet personally, but you do you, Benjamin Harrison. But by far, my absolute favorite presidential pet story has to be Andrew Jackson. This is technically a preview of next week's episode because for the season 1 finale, we're doing Andrew Jackson. So what pet did he have? Andrew Jackson had a pet parrot named Polly, who, if you don't know, parrots repeat what you say. Andrew Jackson had the mouth of a sailor. He did not say good words, and the parrot cussed repeatedly, repeating him. Now, this wouldn't be that bad of a thing if Polly the parrot wasn't invited to Andrew Jackson's funeral after he outlived him. Polly the parrot swore so unconditionally and frequently at Andrew Jackson's funeral he had to be removed from the entire ceremony. And I am very excited to possibly tell that story in completion next week. But with all these presidential pets, we haven't really seen one like it in a pretty long time. So I'm an advocate. I'll fight for it. Let's bring back crazy pets in the White House. Make it a fun tradition. But now, next question. The next one comes from Miss Abby Long. She says, if you could interview any U.S. president, living or dead, what would be your first question? And in quotes, not Reagan. She knows me well enough to know that Ronald Reagan is my favorite president currently, but let's get something straight. I actually wouldn't interview Reagan first. Oh my gosh, don't kill me. Don't kill me. I would love, if I could do it all over, I would interview George Washington, first president of the United States. And I'd first off tell him how the world's going. Tell him what a great country he's created. But this is the question I'd ask him. When you step down after 2 terms. Did you realize how powerful that precedent would be for the future of really our American democracy? George Washington, I said in The Man, the Myth, the Legend, he stepped down from the presidency after 8 years. He could have stayed in there for so much longer. He could have been basically a king, but he didn't. And it's cool to look back and see how many people base the idea of term limits off of him. Other than FDR, nobody really attempted to run even for a 3rd term. And I think he would find it extremely flattering what an impact he really had on America as a whole. Our next question is again from Miss Abby Long, who asks, if you had to rank the top 3 most influential first ladies, who would they be? This is great to talk about because the first ladies in American history, man, are they overlooked. They've done so much for the American people that we don't even really think about, and it's really important to remember. So if I had to rank my top 3, here they are. Number 3, Jackie Kennedy. Not only an icon in beauty and fashion, Jackie Kennedy was America's first lady. She redesigned the White House, gave it not only a fresh coat of paint, literally, but made it more inviting to people. Foreign affairs was a big thing of hers. She traveled to other countries and was extremely kind to the people. She could speak multiple languages. She was an advocate for history and the growth of education. And overall, she was a person that was extremely likable. And even after her husband's tragic death on November 22nd, 1963, she stood strong, advocated for a bunch of things even after his death, and protected her children after all that, and stayed an American icon even through one of our biggest tragedies. Number 2 is Betty Ford. Betty Ford is often overshadowed by her husband's pretty lackluster presidency, but Betty Ford herself is pretty important for us to study and learn about. Betty Ford was extremely impactful. The biggest thing I read about was she was extremely open about her past problems and how to improve them for America, including her bouts with breast cancer and her alcohol abuse, which eventually was turned into the Betty Ford Center, a place for people who are struggling with alcoholism, breast cancer, all these different illnesses that Betty Ford fought for. And she really advocated for the American people and really made our country a better place. And that's why I think she deserves number 2. And my number 1, not even really being close, is Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt, during Franklin Roosevelt's 12 years as president, did a ton. Franklin Roosevelt, if you don't know, was pretty immobile most of his presidency. He got polio at one point and basically could not walk for like half of his presidency. So Eleanor Roosevelt had to do a lot for him. She traveled for him. She went to things to represent him. She truly showed up in everything she could. And she also spoke out on a lot of issues on the radio and all this stuff. And looking back at it, Eleanor Roosevelt is the reason that the First Lady position today is as important as it really is. She had some good questions. Who's next? N. Foster asks, who were the most loved and hated presidents during their actual time in the office? And how has their image changed over time? There's something called the Presidential Approval Rating. It was basically a survey that was started in the early 1900s to ask the American people, do you approve or disapprove of our current president? Now, here's the problem with it. Taking these surveys at random times can really shift the way that people view the president. Depending on what's happening, I could love or I could hate the president. So don't take these approval ratings as this president's entire legacy, because some of these, especially the highest and the lowest in history, really depend on the time period that they were taken. On August 6th and August 9th of 1945, Harry S. Truman dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. At the time, the American people didn't really know what we were doing when we dropped this bomb until Harry Truman got on the TV and just told us it was happening. And it was kind of a culture shock and something that we really didn't expect or know how to react to. And at the time, not a lot of American people really liked it. And it showed. His next approval rating was the worst in history at only 20% approval rating. If you don't know, that's not a lot. But it is funny because 3 years later, he did get reelected as a second-term president, and today, Harry Truman's legacy is kind of strange. You rather really like him because of the atomic bomb decisions, or you really dislike him because of the atomic bomb decisions. It's kind of a back and forth. But now, I always say look at the positives, so let's look at them. On September 11th, 2001, 2 planes hit the World Trade Center, and we were brutally attacked by terrorism. George Bush, in that moment, stood on top of the World Trade Center wreckage 2 days later with a megaphone and said to the American people all the names of the people who have passed away or were missing. This moment, he led America. He told the people who attacked us that we're not going to let this slide. We're going to fight and win. And in that moment, very soon after, he got this 90% approval rating, the highest in presidential history. And now this is a little bit different than Harry Truman, because today, if you ask people, was George Bush a great president? Not a lot of people will really say he had a good presidency, but I can say for full that this moment was what really defined him as a leader of the American people and was a great and really impactful moment in American history. While George Washington himself might not have had an Instagram page, Presidents Unplugged does. If you want to see some presidential content and overall updates on the show, come to the Instagram at presidents_unplugged. See you there. And now we have the final submitter of questions for this very special episode. And somebody I want to give a really big shout out to. Hey Big Sis 22 has been an extremely awesome supporter of Presidents Unplugged, has showed up for every episode, and has just cheered me on along the way. So I want to give a huge shout out to her. And another big shout out on August 29th, 2025, the day that this releases, Hey Big Sis 22 is getting married, so absolute congratulations to her. And now, let's dive into her extremely good question. Why in the stinking world did Franklin Roosevelt serve 4 consecutive terms? This is a great thing that a lot of people just gloss over in history books. The fact that Franklin Roosevelt was not president for 4 years, not 8 years, but 12 years. How was this one man popular enough to get through all of that? Well, he kind of became president at the perfect time for something like this. A time where a presidential transition would not be optimal for the country as a whole. He got elected after Herbert Hoover did not lead the nation into the Great Depression. He just didn't do great things with it, but it's okay. After Herbert Hoover, Franklin Roosevelt stepped in and introduced the New Deal programs. Programs made by Franklin Roosevelt himself to introduce new jobs and new opportunities to build wealth in the United States. Did all of these work? No, not really, but a lot of them did, and it gave him an extreme push for popularity. Yay, we're out of the Great Depression. He's doing so good. Oh, World War II. Hey, here you go. Okay, World War II started in 1939. We weren't involved, and then on December 7th, 1941, a day that will live in infamy, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor in a terrifying event that no one ever expected. Japan bombed one of our naval bases in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, our pretty much biggest one at the time. This set America off and made us dive into World War II. And Franklin Roosevelt was our leader in World War II. These two massive events overlapping with each other is really how I think he was able to stay in as long as he did. He just was doing just good enough at everything he was doing that people said, why would we change? It doesn't make sense to change. And even though FDR was the only president to ever win a third term, oh my gosh, just run for a fourth. In 1944, Franklin Roosevelt ran for the fourth time and won again. And sadly, his health declined tremendously. And only 83 days into his fourth term, on April 12th, 1945, Franklin Roosevelt died. And then Harry Truman became the president and eventually bombed Japan, and we won. But I want to make a pretty big deal, and something that's come up a lot recently with Donald Trump's recent non-consecutive victory and saying that he wants to run again in 2028. The 22nd Amendment, the amendment that says no man can run for more than 2 presidential terms. This is why it's important, okay? Franklin Roosevelt ran for 4 terms. He continued to be president even when he was sick, even when he was dying. He worked so hard, he worked himself to death. And the transfer of power, especially in politics, is so important to keep up, because we can't be working our presidents to death like Franklin Roosevelt did. And Franklin Roosevelt, he was in the right place at the right time with the right circumstances. And that's what allowed him to run for as many terms as he did. But hey, big sis, congrats on your marriage and a wonderful question submitted. And just like that, we're done with the first ever Presidents Unplugged Q&A episode. If you want more episodes like this, make sure to let me know on the Instagram page and check it for future updates on these upcoming episodes, including the Season 1 finale. Tune in next Friday as we talk about Andrew Jackson, the Season 1 finale. A man who fought through everything with the grit and the will of a steam engine. This man not only was a fighter, he did a lot. He fought in over 100 duels in his life, somehow survived, had a bullet lodged in his chest for 40 years, and after a man tried to shoot him, beat him with his walking stick on the ground until he was basically half dead. Yeah, this guy was not playing around. So learn about him and much more next week on Presidents Unplugged. I'm Ty Svensson, and I'll see you soon. God bless. We need to make an executive decision now. The executive decision to follow Presidents Unplugged on Apple Podcasts or Spotify today to be notified weekly that your favorite presidential podcast has released new content. Now, let's get back to the show.